reimbursement, where is that coming from? You know, there are going to be some big challenges and some big discussions to have with providers and to try to work. We do need to develop some new things like partnering with our community partners, nonprofits, and so forth to make sure that people get the services they need. The families that Barry was talking about are exactly who we try to help with at least a couple of hours a day of some compensation and get them some training and support so that they're not just winging it and trying to get to care for someone. But it's so true. We've met people over and over again around the state who've lost their jobs because of trying to care for someone, and they're, like you said, just trying to do the right thing and keeping someone at home. So I would like to learn more about that as well, Barry.
Is there a question in there?
Sorry, the question was about, is there anything being discussed about what to do for Medicaid providers in the way of meeting the challenge of health care benefits for employees?
Your last part, employees, I'm not qualified to know how to advise with respect to that, but I am encouraged that with the expansion, I hope we're going to make sure that we give more opportunities. As a small business guy, I think more competition, more players in the field make for better services. So I'm going to be very supportive of pilots and programs that will somehow move us beyond the care providers that are like United Health and Amerigroup. The big players do arguably do a pretty good job, but I'd like to see Medicaid expanded to include some of the innovative folks that may be able to give some unique services. How it's going to affect the affordable care to employers, as an employer, I'm trying to figure that out too, and we all are.
John, you probably have something to say.
If I understood the question, is from the perspective of your organization, which provides caregivers to go to folks' homes, and being able to get enough reimbursement from the Medicaid program to, as a business owner, pay your employees at a rate that works for them, and also to cover your costs and those kinds of. So if I understood that's what you're asking, there's good news in the Affordable Care Act for some providers. Primary care physicians, for example, get a mandatory rate increase, and it's my understanding that Mike's agency request budget, which I assume is in the governor's budget, is to continue that when that mandatory federal higher payment rate ends, and Nevada has to then pick up its share. I believe that's about a $9 million price tag toward the last 6 months of this biennium. Hopefully that springboards into future bienniums for primary care physicians. There's also a lot of effort going on looking at the hospitals, and especially county hospitals. What can we do to make up for what's lost in the Affordable Care Act from dish payments? So I know there's a lot going on there. And so other providers like you, when I said that we go back to 2007, you have experienced cuts since 2007. It caused, for example, St. Mary's to drop out of the business of providing this care because of those rate cuts. And so I don't see anything in the governor's budget, to my knowledge, that talks about restoring the rate cuts you already have and moving forward to what you really need to cover both your overhead and pay the people that are actually in the field, you know, more than the bare minimum out there. And as Barry will say, this population is only going to be growing exponentially as our population ages. And so I'm not aware of any plan to step up to the plate and increase those Medicaid payment rates for those type providers at the moment, and that's a revenue question again. And getting back to thinking where we were in 2007, rather than just being grateful that we're not facing cut after cut after cut.
Hey, Stacy, I think we really have time for just one more question.
I'm Patty Elsie with Planned Parenthood, and I am representing an agency that is a Medicaid provider. And we do support the expansion of Medicaid, and we echo that the reimbursement rate is difficult, but we want to be a player. We provide preventive health care, and we would be more than willing to be part of an essential community provider, which we would like the legislature to acknowledge that we can help But my question really is kind of dealing with a bill that we have that addresses, we have high teen pregnancy rate in the state of Nevada. We have a mandated sex education program that is inconsistent. And we are trying to strengthen the sex education standard, letting the school districts do their thing as required, but making it more comprehensive. Would you support a bill that would strengthen the current statute that might help lessen the unintended pregnancy rate of teens?
Patty, I think I'm meeting with you on that tomorrow.
Right, but I just thought I'd like to. And I'm gonna talk to you about Medicaid too.
I'm looking forward to our conversation tomorrow and learning about it.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we have time for one more quick question.
Okay.
This isn't so much a question as information. There are a number of bill draft requests and one bill affecting not-for-profit companies, corporations, that I just think we should keep an eye on, because I think some of them may have an impact on any of our organizations that are not-for-profits.
AB 60 is pre-filed.
Yeah, AB 60 is the one I've read, and it concerns me if it applies. I'm not sure it applies, but.
Thank you.
I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this, because we'll cut off that last question, but basically it deals with the register of the Secretary of State, solicitation of contributions in the state. I think it's really aimed at sort of the shyster organizations, but it worded in such a way that may sweep in any nonprofit. And so I think people should take a hard look at that from their organization's perspective.
Paula has a quick statement.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of them coming, and there was one last session that Patrick sponsored last time requiring you to report to LCB. And my concern, and what I went down and testified against these bills last session, not so much because, luckily I'm with the bigger nonprofits, and all the information they wanted is on our website now, so it wasn't so much a hardship. But you get into the small nonprofits, for example, domestic violence volunteers who run programs out in the rurals, who do it for free, that they have a $15,000 budget all year, and they've got to put in 42 reports to the state saying that basically the same thing over and over again. That makes volunteers quit. So perspective is what we're looking for in balance, and so any assistance, if you look and give some feedback, some good ideas. These guys are trying to keep the people that are ripping off people out of the state, and so the intentions are excellent, but sometimes the ramifications haven't been taken into consideration, so watch them.
So sometimes smaller government is good.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, Kyle, we have 3 minutes.
Okay, this will be fast, and thanks for letting me assert executive privilege. So we've had a lot of conversation about healthcare and healthcare providers. My realm is a little bit different. I work in the immigration services realm for Catholic Charities, and these figures are a little old. I think these might be 2011 numbers, something like 7% of the state of Nevada's population and 12% of our workforce is undocumented at last count. And talking as Mr. Sasser has about where Nevada is at the top and the bottom of the list, we have one of the highest instances of undocumented individuals in our communities. And I'm wondering, I don't know that I necessarily have a concrete answer to this or that I'm looking for, but I'm wondering what, in an employment context or maybe also in a health and mental health context, we can do to acknowledge that reality and move forward to try and strengthen our communities and serve those individuals who are, like it or not, believe it or not, part of our community and part of Northern Nevada. There's talk of driver's privilege. There's talk of a couple other things. I'm not really sure where those would interface, but I'd be curious to know what someone in Hickey and also the rest of the county think.
I am a small step. It is the driver's privilege card, and I am going to be supporting that. And I think you will find Republicans supporting Senator Dennis's bill. And again, not to be partisan, but it actually came out of a Utah piece of legislation that was originally proposed by colleagues on my side of the aisle. I think we can expect this year, the president's promising it, and again, I think you're gonna see Republicans signing up for some version of it, comprehensive immigration reform. If the election told us anything, that we're gonna have to deal with this. Probably the dumbest thing that my candidate said last election was that his expectation that people were gonna self-deport. I'll leave it at that. I think we're moving on.
1 minute each, if you want to
You know,
respond.
for sure, this is an opportunity time for immigrants, and so I think if we can just get on the bandwagon and let the tide roll through, because whether it's the governor's language money, the time is now, just like maybe with guns, at least talk about it. So get on the wave and let's go.
The only thing I'll add, and I agree with what was said before, is that one thing, the group that was left out of the Affordable Care Act was this group. So everybody has got health insurance except for these guys, basically. So that is going to be an ongoing challenge for how the state's going to pay for that. That's going to, despite the good news is that hopefully the counties will be relieved to some degree by Medicaid expansion and the Affordable Care Act, so we should free up some funds, but they should not be taken away to divert it to other things, because they gotta have that reserve as long as that remains the law. So the payment for medical care with this group is an issue that has not gone away and needs to be dealt with.
Thank you all very much for staying for this very important portion of our event this morning. Please give a round of applause to our panelists.